The Galactic Council had seen many species rise to prominence among the stars, but none quite like humanity. When the humans first arrived at the great station orbiting Proxima Secundus, they came not with warships, but with trade vessels. Their delegation wore simple clothes and carried gifts instead of weapons. Ambassador Chen stood before the assembled representatives of 200 starfaring civilizations and spoke words that would echo through the decades to come. "We come in peace," she said, her voice steady and clear. "We have learned the hard way that violence only breeds more violence. Our history is stained with the blood of our own kind, and we carry those scars with us. We do not wish to repeat our mistakes among the stars." The council members listened with various degrees of interest. The Krath, a warrior species that had conquered 12 systems through military might, clicked their mandibles in what might have been amusement. The peaceful Yulari, aquatic beings who communicated through color changes in their translucent skin, glowed with approval. The ancient Vorheim, synthetic beings who had outlived their organic creators, simply observed and recorded. In the years that followed, humanity proved true to their word. They established colonies on unclaimed worlds, never encroaching on territory that belonged to others. When disputes arose over mining rights in the Tellus Belt, human negotiators spent 6 months crafting a compromise that satisfied all parties. When the young and aggressive Drex Empire threatened to invade the peaceful Somali collective, it was human diplomats who stood between the fleets and talked both sides down from the brink of war. The galaxy began to see a pattern. Humans were patient. Humans were diplomatic. Humans sought peaceful solutions, even when provoked. When a Krath raiding party attacked a human cargo vessel and killed 17 crew members, the human government demanded justice through legal channels. They brought their case before the Galactic Court, presented evidence, and accepted the ruling that ordered the craft to pay reparations and punish those responsible. No human warship crossed into Krath space. No retaliatory strike was launched. "They are weak," the Krath generals said among themselves. "They talk of their violent past, but it must have been exaggerated. A truly warrior species would have demanded blood for blood." But there were others who wondered. The Vorheim, with their perfect memory banks containing millions of years of galactic history, noticed something curious. They pulled records of humanity's development, intercepted broadcasts from Earth before first contact, and studied the humans' own historical databases. What they found disturbed them. Humans had nearly destroyed themselves, multiple times. They had created weapons capable of rendering their entire planet uninhabitable. They had waged wars that consumed continents and killed hundreds of millions. They had developed the science of killing to such an extent that their military tactics and strategies were studied by species that had been traveling the stars for millennia. The humans' description of their own history as violent was not exaggeration. It was, if anything, understatement. "Why, then, do they not fight?" a young Vorheim named Collector of Truce asked his elder. "With such capacity for warfare, why do they pursue peace so ardently?" "Perhaps," the elder replied, "it is precisely because they know warfare so well that they fear it so much." Humanity continued to build their reputation as peacemakers. They mediated 17 major conflicts in their first 30 years among the stars. They provided humanitarian aid to species affected by natural disasters, asking nothing in return. They shared their technology freely, even with species that had initially been hostile to them. When a plague struck the Yulari homeworld, human medical teams worked around the clock to develop a cure, saving billions of lives. The human philosophy spread through the Galactic Council. More species began to see the wisdom in dialogue over destruction. Trade flourished. Scientific cooperation reached heights never before achieved. The galaxy entered what historians would later call the Great Peace, and humanity was credited as its primary architect. But not everyone was pleased with this new order. The Krath Empire, built on military conquest and the subjugation of lesser species, found their way of life increasingly marginalized. Younger species looked to humanity as an example rather than to the ancient warrior traditions of the Krath. The Empire's influence waned as their methods were rejected by the broader galactic community. In the halls of the Krath High Command, resentment festered. War leader Thraxus, supreme commander of the Krath military, paced before his generals. "We are being suffocated by this peace," he growled. "Our warriors grow soft. Our fleets rust in orbit. The humans have poisoned the galaxy with their weakness, and the other species drink it gladly." "The humans are not weak," one general dared to suggest. "Their history suggests—" "Their history is lies." Thraxus slammed his forearms against the strategy table. "Look at their actions, not their words. They are attacked, and they negotiate. They are insulted, and they compromise. They have forgotten how to fight, if they ever knew at all. They are a species of cowards hiding behind pretty speeches." The general who had spoken fell silent. Thraxus continued, "But they have given us an opportunity. By making themselves indispensable to galactic peace, by positioning themselves as the moral center of the Council, they have also made themselves a target. Remove the humans, and this entire house of cards collapses. The galaxy will remember that strength, not words, is what truly matters." The plan was set in motion with careful precision. The Krath could not attack humanity directly without facing the wrath of the entire Galactic Council. But the Yulari, humanity's closest allies, and the species they had saved from extinction, were more vulnerable. The Yulari had no military to speak of. They relied entirely on the Council's protection and on the goodwill they had cultivated through centuries of peaceful existence. Thraxus dispatched his finest fleet to the Yulari home system under the pretense of conducting military exercises in nearby space. The Galactic Council protested, but the Krath were within their legal rights. The exercises were being conducted in unclaimed territory, after all. Humanity sent a delegation to negotiate a withdrawal, offering economic incentives and proposing alternative locations for the Krath war games. The Krath accepted the proposal. Their fleet began to withdraw. The crisis, it seemed, had been averted through diplomacy once again. Ambassador Chen reported to the Council that the situation had been resolved peacefully. The humans, as always, had chosen negotiation over confrontation, and it had worked. Then, without warning, the Krath fleet reversed course. They entered the Yulari system with weapons hot and targeting systems active. The small defense satellites the Yulari maintained for protection against asteroids and space debris were destroyed in the first salvo. The Krath bombardment began. Water cities that had stood for thousands of years boiled away under plasma fire. The Yulari, peaceful and unprepared, had no means of fighting back. They broadcast desperate pleas for help. They called out to their friends, their allies, their saviors. They called to humanity. The human response was immediate. Every human ship within 3 jumps of the Yulari system changed course. Ambassador Chen stood before the Galactic Council and demanded immediate intervention. But the Council had to debate, had to vote, had to follow procedure. By the time the resolution passed authorizing a peacekeeping force, nearly 2 billion Yulari were dead. The human fleet arrived first, before the official Council forces could be assembled. 53 human vessels, a mix of cargo haulers, colony ships, and the small patrol craft that humanity maintained for protection against pirates. They faced a Krath armada of over 300 warships, battle-hardened and equipped with weapons designed for conquest. Captain Sarah Williams of the human vessel Defiance opened a channel to the Krath fleet. Her message was simple and direct. "Cease fire immediately. Withdraw from Yulari space. You have committed an act of genocide, and the Galactic Council will hold you accountable." Thraxus himself responded, his voice dripping with contempt. "Little human, your ships are no match for the Krath Empire. You have no weapons capable of harming us. You have no military tradition to guide you. You are civilians playing at being soldiers. Leave now or share the fate of the Yulari. There was a long pause. Then Captain Williams spoke again, and her voice was different, colder, harder. You misunderstand. We are not asking you to withdraw. We are telling you, this is your only warning. Thraxus laughed. He ordered his fleet to target the human ships. The Krath had superior numbers, superior firepower, and superior military experience. The humans had cargo vessels and empty threats. It would be a massacre. But the humans did not retreat. Instead, they did something that shocked the Krath and mystified the galaxy. The human ships separated, moving with a coordination that seemed impossible for civilian vessels. They began to broadcast on all frequencies, and what they broadcast were not pleas for peace or calls for negotiation. They were tactical instructions, military codes, and something that sounded almost like song. The cargo haulers opened their bays, and what emerged were not supplies, but weapons. Missiles, railguns, laser arrays, and devices the galaxy had never seen before poured out. The colony ships deployed fighter craft that moved with an agility that defied physics. The patrol vessels lit up their engines and accelerated at rates that should have crushed their crews. In the Galactic Council, the Vorheim Elder, who had once contemplated human nature, felt something he had not experienced in 10,000 years. Fear. They were always ready, he whispered. Every ship, every human in space, they were always ready for war. They simply chose not to show it. The Krath fleet opened fire, confident in their victory. What happened next would be recorded in every military academy in the galaxy for centuries to come. The humans did not fight like the Krath, with overwhelming force and brutal directness. They did not fight like any species the galaxy had seen before. They fought like humans, with tactics developed through millennia of warfare against their own kind. Human ships that appeared to be damaged would suddenly strike with hidden weapons. Human formations would collapse in apparent panic, only to surround and destroy the Krath forces that pursued them. Human vessels that seemed to flee would lead their pursuers into kill zones, where crossfire from multiple angles would shred even the heaviest Krath armor. The humans used every trick, every deception, every ruthless tactic they had learned from thousands of years of studying war. They targeted life support. They hacked enemy systems. They used the debris from destroyed ships as weapons, accelerating chunks of metal to relativistic speeds and sending them crashing through Krath hulls. The battle lasted 7 hours. When it was over, the Krath fleet had been destroyed. All 317 warships were gone, reduced to drifting wreckage and expanding clouds of debris. The human fleet had lost 23 vessels, and even those had managed to evacuate most of their crews before the end. Captain Williams broadcast one final message, this time to the entire galaxy. We came to the stars hoping to leave our violent past behind. We chose peace not because we are weak, but because we know the true cost of war. We have tried for 30 years to show you that there is another way. But understand this. If you threaten those we have sworn to protect, if you commit atrocities thinking we will not respond, you will learn why humanity spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of warfare. We do not start wars, but we will end them. The message was received in every corner of known space. On the Krath homeworld, in the halls of the High Command, war leader Thraxus listened and understood that he had made a terrible mistake. He had mistaken humanity's choice for their nature. He had confused their diplomacy with weakness. He had thought that because they pursued peace, they had forgotten how to wage war. The human fleet remained in orbit around the Yulari homeworld, protecting the survivors while relief efforts began. More human ships arrived every day, bringing supplies, medical equipment, and aid workers. But they also brought warships. Real warships, not disguised cargo haulers. Ships that had been built in secret in the outer reaches of human space, maintained and ready, but never deployed. Ships designed by a species that had nearly destroyed itself and had learned every possible lesson about how to destroy others. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The bombing of the Yulari homeworld was unanimously declared an act of genocide. The Krath Empire was given a choice: submit to war crime tribunals and pay reparations, or face the combined might of the galactic community. For the first time in their history, the Krath chose to submit. They looked at the human fleet, at the cold efficiency with which humanity had dismantled their armada, and they chose survival over pride. But the damage was done. The great peace was shattered. The galaxy had seen behind the mask humanity wore, and they were afraid. Species that had once seen humans as friends now watched them with wary eyes. The Vorheim calculated probabilities and found that in any military conflict with humanity, the likely outcome was human victory. The mathematics were undeniable. Humans had spent longer fighting wars than most species had spent in space. They had developed weapons, tactics, and strategies that the galaxy had never imagined. And most terrifying of all, they had done all of this while maintaining the appearance of a peaceful, diplomatic species. Ambassador Chen addressed the council 1 month after the battle. She looked tired, older than she had just weeks before. "I want to be clear about what happened," she said. "We did not want this. We did not choose this. For 30 years, we have worked to build a galaxy where conflicts are resolved through dialogue, where violence is the last resort, not the first instinct. We meant every word we said about peace." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the assembled representatives. "But we also learned, through blood and fire and the near extinction of our species, that there are times when peace is not possible, when talking fails, when evil acts must be opposed with force. We prepared for those times while praying they would never come. We built our warships and hid them away, hoping we would never need them. We trained our people in the arts of war, hoping they would never have to fight. The Krath forced our hand. They committed an atrocity against a defenseless species. They murdered billions, and they did it believing that we would not respond, that our commitment to peace was the same as weakness. They were wrong. We are not weak. We are restrained. There is a difference." A Krath representative, one of the few who had survived the purge of the High Command, stood to speak. His voice was humble, stripped of the arrogance that had once characterized his species. "The Krath Empire acknowledges its error. We mistook your mercy for vulnerability. We see now that you are the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because you choose not to be. A warrior who knows only battle is predictable. A peacemaker who can wage war is not." Chen nodded slowly. "We want to go back to the way things were. We want to return to diplomacy, to cooperation, to building a better galaxy together. But we cannot unsee what has been seen. The galaxy knows now what we are capable of. You know that behind every human diplomat is a warrior. Behind every human trade vessel is a potential warship. Behind every human smile is the inherited memory of 10,000 years of warfare." She looked down at her hands and her voice grew softer. "We wish it were not so. We wish we could forget how to fight. But we cannot. It is written into our genes, carved into our history, burned into our collective memory. The best we can do is choose every single day not to be the monsters we are capable of becoming. We can choose peace. We can choose mercy. We can choose to help rather than harm. But make no mistake, it is a choice, and we make it every day." The council chamber was silent. Every species present was reconsidering their understanding of humanity. The humans had seemed so much like them, so eager to fit in, so determined to prove they belonged among the peaceful species of the galaxy. Now they understood the truth. Humanity did not fit in. They were unique, possibly uniquely dangerous, a species that had mastered violence and then chosen to set it aside without forgetting a single lesson. Over the following months, the galaxy adjusted to this new reality. Some species drew closer to humanity, seeing the value in having such powerful allies. Others distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the knowledge of what humans could do. The Yulari, those who survived, remained steadfast friends. They understood that humanity had not changed. Humanity had simply revealed what they had always been. The human fleets were no longer hidden. Warships patrolled human space openly, a visible reminder to anyone who might mistake human diplomacy for weakness. But those same warships also carried medical supplies and aid workers. They responded to disasters. They protected shipping lanes. They did everything that human vessels had always done. But now everyone knew that they could do so much more. Ambassador Chen remained at her post, though she confided to friends that she felt she had failed. "We were supposed to show them a better way," she said. "Instead, we showed them that we are just as capable of violence as any species that has ever raised a weapon, maybe more so." But there were those who disagreed. The Vorheim elder, keeper of ages, requested a private meeting with Chen. They met in a garden on the council station, surrounded by plants from 100 worlds. "You believe you have failed," he said, "but I have lived for 12,000 years and observed countless civilizations. I tell you that what humanity has accomplished is remarkable." Chen looked at him, confusion evident on her face. "How can you say that? We revealed ourselves as warriors, as killers. We destroyed 300 ships and killed thousands of Krath in a matter of hours. We proved that we are exactly what we claimed we were not." "No," the Vorheim said. "You proved that you are exactly what you claimed to be. You said you understood the cost of war. You demonstrated that understanding by preventing war for 30 years, even when provoked. You said you had learned from your violent past. You demonstrated that learning by choosing peace when you could have chosen violence. The fact that you possess the capability for great violence but choose not to exercise it is not a failure. It is the highest form of civilization." He paused, his synthetic form reflecting the light of a dozen suns. "Other species have achieved peace because they lack the capacity for effective violence. The Yulara are peaceful because they evolved without natural predators and never developed aggressive instincts. The Somali collective maintains peace because their biology makes them vulnerable to their own weapons. But humanity? Humanity is peaceful despite being exquisitely designed for warfare. You choose peace knowing you could choose war. That is true morality. That is true strength." Chen considered his words. "But the galaxy fears us now." "Yes," the Vorheim agreed. "They do. But fear is not always a bad thing. The Krath did not fear you, and look what happened. They committed genocide because they believed they could do so without consequence. Fear of human retaliation might prevent the next atrocity. Fear of what humanity can do might make other species think twice before resorting to violence. Fear, properly applied, can be a tool for peace." "That sounds like we're just threatening everyone into behaving," Chen said. "Is that not what laws do?" the Vorheim replied. "Is that not what consequences do? The galaxy has rules, but rules without enforcement are merely suggestions. For 30 years, humanity has helped enforce those rules through diplomacy and economic pressure. Now the galaxy knows there is another level of enforcement available if needed. That knowledge may prevent it from ever being necessary again." Chen smiled slightly. "You're trying to make me feel better about this." "I am trying to help you see the truth," the Vorheim said. "Humanity has given the galaxy a gift, though not the one you intended. You showed us that peace is not the absence of the capacity for violence, but the choice to refrain from it. You showed us that true diplomacy comes not from weakness, but from strength held in check. You showed us that the most effective deterrent against war is not the inability to fight, but the certainty that if you do fight, you will lose." In the weeks and months that followed, an interesting pattern emerged. Species that had been threatening their neighbors suddenly became more diplomatic. Border disputes that had dragged on for years were resolved through negotiation. Pirates and raiders found their activities drastically curtailed as merchant vessels were no longer seen as safe targets. The galaxy did not return to the Great Peace, but it achieved something perhaps more stable. A peace maintained not by naivety, but by understanding. Humanity continued to play their role as mediators and diplomats, but now their words carried a weight they had not before. When human negotiators suggested a compromise, both sides knew that rejection might mean facing human intervention. When human observers monitored a ceasefire, everyone knew that violations would be met with more than strongly worded letters. The velvet glove of human diplomacy was unchanged, but now everyone could see the iron fist beneath it. The Krath Empire underwent a transformation. The old high command was gone, executed by their own people for the disaster they had brought upon their civilization. A new generation of Krath leaders emerged, ones who had learned the lesson their predecessors had died teaching. They reached out to humanity, not as enemies or rivals, but as students. "Teach us," they said. "Teach us how to set aside the warrior's path without forgetting the warrior's skills. Teach us how to be strong and peaceful at the same time." It was a strange request, and many humans were skeptical. The Krath had murdered billions of Yulari. They had forced humanity to reveal its true nature. They had shattered the Great Peace. Why should humanity help them? But Ambassador Chen, after much thought, agreed. "Because," she said, "if we refuse to teach them, we are no better than they were. We become the thing we fought against. Exclusive keepers of power, unwilling to share our knowledge, maintaining superiority through secrecy. That is not who we are." So humanity began to teach, not military tactics or weapons design, but philosophy. The history of human warfare, yes, but more importantly, the history of how humanity had stepped back from the brink. The treaties and agreements and international laws that had slowly, painfully pulled humanity away from self-destruction. The cultural evolution that had transformed warfare from honorable to horrific, from glorious to grotesque. The long, difficult process of learning that victory in war was hollow when everyone had lost. Other species joined the classes. The young and aggressive Drex, who had nearly gone to war with the Somali years before. The Turvani, whose culture glorified martial prowess. Even some of the peaceful species came to listen and learn, wanting to understand the humans who had saved them and frightened them in equal measure. The classes became informal councils, places where species could discuss not just the mechanics of war, but its morality, its cost, and its alternatives. 3 years after the Battle of Ular, as it came to be known, the Galactic Council held a memorial service for those who had died. Humans stood beside Yulari, mourning the billions lost. Krath representatives laid down weapons at a monument, a symbol of their commitment to change. Ambassador Chen gave a speech that was broadcast across the galaxy. "We cannot bring back those who were lost," she said. "We cannot undo the damage that was done, but we can honor their memory by ensuring that their deaths were not meaningless." The galaxy learned a terrible lesson that day. We learned that peace is fragile. We learned that good intentions are not enough. We learned that sometimes, despite our best efforts, violence cannot be avoided. But we also learned something else. We learned that there are those who will stand against atrocity, whatever the cost. We learned that there are principles worth fighting for. We learned that the capacity for violence, when held by those who understand its horror, can be a force for protection rather than destruction. She paused, looking out at the assembled representatives. Humanity did not want to be the galaxy's warriors. We wanted to be its friends, its partners, its fellow travelers on the path to a better future. We still want that, but we have accepted that we have another role to play as well. We are the reminder that peace must be guarded. We are the deterrent against those who would break the galaxy's laws. We are the ones who remember how to fight so that others do not have to learn. We make this promise to you. We will never start a war. We will never be the aggressors. We will never use our power to conquer or dominate. But if you commit genocide, if you prey upon the innocent, if you break the fundamental laws that hold our civilization together, we will respond. And when we do, you will understand why humanity spent 10,000 years learning how to end conflicts decisively and completely. We are the reluctant warriors. We are the peaceful soldiers. We are humanity, and we choose peace. But we are ready for war. The galaxy listened, and the galaxy understood. In the years that followed, a new era began. Not the great peace which had been built on the naive hope that all species could set aside violence through mutual goodwill. This was something more realistic, more sustainable. The armed peace, historians would call it. A peace maintained by the certain knowledge that violence would be met with overwhelming response. A peace where diplomacy was backed by the credible threat of force. A peace that humanity, more than any other species, had made possible. Human colonies continued to grow. Human traders continued to travel the space lanes. Human diplomats continued to mediate disputes. But now, human warships patrolled the void between stars, visible and vigilant. And the galaxy, having learned what happened when humanity finally went to war, did everything possible to ensure that it would never be necessary again. Ambassador Chen retired 5 years after the Battle of Ular. She returned to Earth, to a small house by an ocean, and spent her remaining years writing. Her memoirs became required reading for diplomats across the galaxy. In them, she wrote about the burden of being human in a galaxy that had expected them to be something they were not. She wrote about the guilt of revealing humanity's true nature, and the slow acceptance that perhaps it had been necessary. In the final pages, she reflected on what humanity had accomplished. "We came to the stars running from our past," she wrote. "We wanted to be better than we had been. We wanted to prove that we could change, that we could be peaceful, that we could build instead of destroy. And we did all of those things. But we also learned that we could not escape what we were. We could not unmake our history or unlearn our lessons. The capacity for violence that we had hoped to leave behind came with us to the stars because it is part of who we are. But that is not a tragedy. It is simply the truth. We are a species that knows war intimately and chooses peace deliberately. We are a species that can destroy but prefers to create. We are a species that will not start wars, but will end them if we must. That is humanity's gift to the galaxy. The understanding that true peace comes not from inability to fight, but from the choice not to. We are the proof that even the most violent species can change, can grow, can become something better while still remaining themselves. We are humanity. We are warriors who choose peace. We are killers who value life. We are the scariest species in the galaxy because we know exactly how scary we are and choose to be kind anyway. That is who we are. That is who we will always be. And the galaxy is safer because of it. The book ended there, but the story did not. Humanity continued to be humanity, complex and contradictory, peaceful and powerful, diplomatic and dangerous. They remain the galaxy's reluctant warriors, the species that would not start wars but would end them. And for centuries to come, whenever young species joined the Galactic Council and asked why humanity held such a unique position of respect and fear, they were told the story of the Battle of Ular. They were told what happens when you mistake humanity's choice for their nature. They were told why humans do not start wars and what happens when they finally do. And they were told, above all, to be grateful that humanity had chosen to be their friends, because the alternative was too terrible to contemplate.